the pets training a couple weeks ago, and one of our featured um, presenters was our current district governor and next year's Polio Plus chairman for the district, right? And I won't say any names, but if we had a sergeant of arms going right now, I think it might come into play. But Tom was talking about the how hard, about getting access to the polio vaccine and people over in these third world countries, and he said, and it's not like you can just drive up to your local CVS and get a shot.
Whoa!
Ooh.
Oh
Yes,
man!
technically, since I'm secretary-elect, that kind of puts me at sergeant at arms, doesn't it?
Yep.
Okay, well, we've got, I think we're gonna have a nice little $5 Happy Buck fine since we haven't had any Happy Bucks
All right.
lately.
I do have to call medicine shop pharmacy on
There you go. There you go.
on refill today. And also, we need to add memory pills.
I've got some, but I can't find them.
You better hope that pharmacist at medicine shop is paying attention this morning.
Yeah.
If that particular pharmacist is actually filling the right prescription,
Yeah.
Anyway.
I had a laugh. I called him out. I didn't call him out in front of everybody. I texted him right away and called him out on it.
Waited to call. Well, at least it's just a club event, not a district or zone event. So
Oh, Tom, we definitely could arrange it to be announced at a district or zone event. Trust me. I have some information about the zone conference. I have all the information. I can splice this in there somewhere. I'm just saying it is possible. So, my address, you know what I like to drink. So I'm just leaving it at that.
Leave him a bottle of Diet Pepsi on the
Yes.
patio.
Thank you. No. Thank you, Eric. I appreciate that. Yes.
now another good note. Yesterday, with David's help, we recorded my interview with Rotary General Secretary John Huco, and I plan to do it at my office because generally the office environment, the Wi-Fi is more solid. We have tech people, the whole 9 yards. Well, about 3/4 of the way through, it just died. So I was able to get back in on my phone, but then, there's different background. But I thought it was a very good interview because Mr. Huco and I know each other over the last 10 years of cycling together in Tucson and once in Chicago and so forth. So it went really well, but I thought, oh my, right in the middle. But David will do his magic somehow technically and blend it all together.
I have 2 videos I have to edit and stitch together. Somehow I might have Tom saying something about CVS on that edit. I'm not sure yet, but we'll.
Now the trick is don't mention that word.
Just throwing that one out there. But anyway, Mitch will not be joining us today. He texted me and said he's got a lot going for a 9 o'clock service. So he will not be on. Brian, you said you had 2 things. I didn't know if that was one or both wrapped up in the
other.
one.
Yeah, no, the other thing was just to say how fun it was to have some Rotarians working this past event. Jerry was the greeter and the screener, and he did a great job. And Ann worked the where you monitor for the 15 minutes, and she was keeping people well organized and everything. And Dave Muller came in to relieve her towards the end, and it just was really nice and good event. It was our busiest one ever. It was we were jam packed. That's about the max we can do.
Brian, how many vaccines did you do?
We did 320.
Wow.
So, and we probably would have geared up to do that again, but we're not can't do the Johnson & Johnson now, so we'll just be doing strictly second dose Moderna for this one, and I think we've got about 250 somewhere around there scheduled for this week. So yeah, it went really well.
It was very interesting. At one point, my voice was going, and I said to Brian or his wife, I said, I'm not used to talking a lot anymore. Like I did when I was in the classroom. Dave, you can understand that. And it was kind of like, whoa, I got to get this voice in shape if I'm going to do some talking. Nah, I'm retired.
Well, it usually takes, at least for me, it takes the first few weeks of in the room to get the voice retrained and the bladder retrained. After that, you usually figure it out. For those Kaitlyn and Heather, I substitute teach while I have up through this year. This year has put a monkey wrench into things. We did have a substitute that had to go to the bathroom, and he just walked out of the classroom.
Oh, good.
Left the kids. Now this is 5th grade. Well, trust me, you don't want to leave 5th grade on their own. Or 6th grade. No, I would have left kindergartners on their own before I would have left 5th or 6th grade on their own. Tell you the honest truth.
Wow.
So they're you learn certain tricks. As Jerry knows, you learn the teacher dance. I remember subbing in ISS, and I asked the guy I was filling in for, because he shifted to another position, and I said, when do we take bathroom breaks? He said, what do you mean? I said, well, schedule and so on. He said, if you need to go, they go with you. Take a bathroom break.
Oh, God.
Pretty much. They all walk in with you. So I thought, okay, well, we'll call in for backup at that point. So
Just like a pack of dogs.
Anyway, anybody else have anything? Any comments or now that it went to the toilet, literally on that comment of mine, anybody have anything else they need to mention?
I want to apologize if I missed a meeting on, was it Monday night with that William Dees or whatever? What, did that happen?
Oh,
We ended
yeah,
up
probably
with
that was
company.
a district meet. That was a district meeting.
We had
Yeah,
ended up with company, and I didn't make it on. Nah, I'm sorry.
We've got 3 more May 19, June 16, June 23rd, June 30th that we talked about possibly doing an outside event somewhere to make up for that one, since we'll all be vaccinated at that point. We'll see how that shakes out as we get closer to it. Tom sent me a lead on one person I'm going to contact and see if they'll fill in one of those days. But anybody have any ideas? We're down to 3.
I'm still hoping to come through with that surprise, but I don't know if it's going to happen or not.
Sure.
I'm trying.
No worries. I mean, we got through this far. We'll make it through the last couple of months. No big deal.
Have we talked about meeting back live again?
Ryan, I thought you had mentioned you were looking at that starting in July, correct?
I said that we could talk about our next board meeting about meeting, but I would think that by July we should be good to go. But we'd have to kind of pull the membership and make sure everybody's okay with it, I think.
And I know one of the things
we just briefly talked about it at the board meeting.
One of the things we also talked about was switching locations to this the grounds. I can't think of the name of it right now.
Grounds.
Higher grounds. Thank you, on Dorset. So that's something we'll have to talk to them about. Russo's is still not open for anything at this point yet. So, well, we have to do some adjustments anyway.
Sounds good.
Anne, I'm going to turn it over to you for our speaker. We've already killed enough time and wasted. I'm sorry, I regaled them with our nonsense. So Anne, it's yours.
Okay, this is the time of year, as you all know, that we do our Rotary Scholarship, go through the application process and eventually interview and select candidates or select winners of our scholarships. And a couple years ago, we started working with Scholarship Central to make it a little easier on us as far as getting the scholarships and screening them and narrowing down the applications. I invited Kaitlyn Venta to come speak with us today because she's the person at Scholarship Central with whom I work, along with one of the high school counselors. And she's going to talk to us about Scholarship Central and the Scholarship Foundation itself. So Kaitlyn, thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate it. And we look forward to your presentation.
Of course, happy to be here and thrilled that you all continue to offer a scholarship for students. It's so important and so helpful to them. Let me pull my screen up. So I'll tell you all about my Scholarship Central, but I will start by telling you just a little bit about me as an introduction. So I grew up in North Carolina, went to college in North Carolina, and then I came to St. Louis 10 years ago doing an AmeriCorps style volunteer program. So I lived in community with 3 other women, and we all did a year of work for a nonprofit organization volunteering. And so I stayed at that job. I worked at a school called Marion Middle School, which is an all-girls Catholic middle school in South St. Louis. So I stayed at that school for 8 years, and I worked both with the middle schoolers, but then our school also had a program where we worked with students in high school and college after they graduated the middle school. And so that's what I did, was I stuck with the students all the way through their education process to help them complete college, find jobs, go on to be productive members of society. But then about a year and a half ago, this opportunity with my Scholarship Central opened up, and I had worked kind of on the other side of my Scholarship Central where I was helping students apply for scholarships. So I was really familiar with the platform and the program. And so when the manager position opened up, I was interested because I saw it as a way that I could help more students be able to achieve the goal of going to college. So that's a little bit about me. But my Scholarship Central is a free scholarship search and application website for Missouri students. We do have opportunities for students in Illinois and a few for students outside of those areas, but we are primarily Missouri. You don't have to go to school in Missouri for most of the scholarships, but generally students from Missouri are our target audience. My Scholarship Central was started in 2011 by St. Louis graduates, which back then was known as the College Access Pipeline Project. So this was a collaborative network of people who were doing work to help students go to college. So scholarship providing organizations, college access organizations, colleges, everyone who was kind of working together to help students make it through high school and to college. And Scholarship Central started kind of as a list of scholarships, but there were 2 organizations, the St. Louis Community Foundation and the Scholarship Foundation of St. Louis, who each provide a number of scholarships each year, who got to the point where they said, okay, we've been doing paper applications for all of our scholarships up to this point, but right around 2010, 2011, technology had kind of caught up to the point where they could move to an online for the administration. So said, well, if we're going to do this, let's do this together and let's make it a community resource. Let's open it up to other people. Let's open it up to community members. So it really is a great resource for the students. And their goal was to level the playing field for students looking for funding for college. So they had particularly in mind low-income students, first-generation students, students of color, students who might go to a high school where there's one college counselor for the entire senior class, knowing that that counselor may not be able to provide one-on-one scholarship advice and support to every student. They said, well, what if there was a way where we could take some of these barriers away? Every student knows that this is the one place you go to find scholarships, and you don't have to be, working with a private college or to be successful on this platform. So that's kind of how it came to be. So we've been around for about 10 years. And this image kind of gives you an idea of who the key players are in Scholarship Central. So one of the most important things about my Scholarship Central is that it's collaborative. So it's not about any one person or one organization. It's really about lots of groups all coming together to help students. So these three foundations at the top make up the core of My Scholarship Central: the Scholarship Foundation of St. Louis, the St. Louis Community Foundation, and the Missouri Scholarship and Loan Foundation. Close to half of the scholarships we provide come from these three organizations, and they also provide the most funding for students. So these three foundations really are the kind of the core of My Scholarship Central, and each of these organizations manages their own scholarships. So I'm not building their opportunities, I'm not contacting their applicants, they take care of kind of all of their own work. And so you'll see those two organizations that started My Scholarship Central, and then the Missouri Scholarship and Loan Foundation became a part of our site 5 years ago. And when they came aboard, we became a statewide resource. So we started as a resource for St. Louis metro area students, but Missouri Scholarship and Loan has opportunities for students across the state. So with that, we expanded to become across the state. So aside from those three foundations, we also work with about 50 community organizations, and that's the bulk of my job. So I am working to support community organizations like yours, and a number of those pictured administer their scholarships. So really, it's like if you're a nonprofit organization who offers a scholarship and you want to be a part of our site, we'll work with you to kind of help you get you to students. And one of the big reasons that My Scholarship Central is collaborative is we know that every little bit of funding makes a big difference for a student. $1,000 scholarship might not be enough to get a student to college, but if they come on My Scholarship Central and they get a $1,000 scholarship and a $2,000 scholarship and a $500 scholarship, that might be enough to close the gap and for them to be able to go to college. So our hope is that maybe students come looking for one specific scholarship, or they come and they find one, but then they also find others that they can apply for. My Scholarship Central is also completely student focused. Our goal is to make this process as easy as possible for students. So we keep that in mind with everything that we do, from our application process to the eligibility to the requirements. We are here to help students. Yes, the community organizations we work with are really important and we want to serve them the best that we can, but our goal is more students get the funding that they need to go to college. We are also a free program. So there is absolute cost to use our website. We don't run any ads. We do not sell any information. It is completely free, which is different than a lot of scholarship websites. Some scholarship websites are free, but then there are ads all over the place, or students' information is sold, or some start free. And then when you want to start applying for scholarships, there's a cost. But ours is completely free, and that's really important for us. And that's a model that we'll keep moving towards. We're also free for the community organizations. So thank you to the support from the three foundations that make up the core of Scholarship Central. Being a part of Scholarship Central as a community organization is free, because we know, like, if we charged an organization a fee to be on our site, most likely that means they would have less money to give in scholarships, and we want as much money as possible to go straight to the students. And then finally, My Scholarship Central is not its own nonprofit, but we are a fund at the St. Louis Community Foundation. So they are our fiscal sponsor. I'm on their payroll. That's where my office is. But I kind of do my own work as managing My Scholarship Central. So My Scholarship Central initially started at the Scholarship Foundation, and the original staff member was housed there. And then about 5-6 years ago, there was the realization that the St. Louis Community Foundation, another scholarship provider who does fiscal sponsorship, whose main work is doing donor advised funds, was a better fit. So that's where we are housed. So just a little bit more information about who we are. I talked about the three major foundations. These are examples of the type of community organizations that we have on our site. So cultural groups, service organizations like yours, college access programs, fraternities and sororities. We have a whole wide range of organizations that provide scholarships on our site. Each year, we have about 130 different scholarship and interest-free student loan opportunities. So those interest-free student loans are a little bit different than a scholarship, where a student is expected to pay them back, but they're only paying back what they borrow. If they borrow $5,000, they're paying back $5,000, not $5,000 plus years and years and years of interest, which can quickly turn into a lot of money. Awards range from $500 to $10,000. Each scholarship sets their own amount. And a number of the scholarships on our site are renewable, where a student receives it 1 year, and then as long as they keep meeting the criteria, they can renew their scholarship to receive it in future years. The majority of our scholarships also have a need-based component. So that means that the scholarship administrator, the scholarship program is looking and saying, okay, what is this family's financial situation? How many other scholarships has this student received? Is there a funding gap for this student that we can help close? So it's not a requirement to be on My Scholarship Central to be need-based, but it is something that we do encourage to at least consider, and something that a lot of the scholarships do have as a component. And so need-based can look like a lot of different things. College is really expensive, as you all know. So a family may be pretty solidly middle class and still have need, and we're able to provide them with some support. And then kind of on the back end technology side, the platform that we use for My Scholarship Central is called Blackbaud Award Management. And so it's a program used by a number of colleges and other scholarship programs where we're able to have everything on one site and do all of the back end work. Any questions as I go, put them in the chat, wave, just come on and ask as you go. I've touched on a few of these pieces, but to be a part of My Scholarship Central, you have to be a nonprofit or a foundation. So it's very important to us that these are coming from nonprofit organizations. There can't be any fee or cost to the applicant. So it can't be a scholarship from an organization that requires a membership fee for applicants. Where this sometimes comes up is a number of the credit unions have scholarships, but you often have to be a member of the credit union. And to be a member of the credit union, you have to have money in an account. So we don't have credit union scholarships on My Scholarship Central because it requires money there. Because we really want to do, we do really want to stay free. Are you ready to go to school? Hold on 1 second. How was the day, big girl? Okay, say hi to everybody and then you go to school. You say hi? Hi. That is you as a baby. Have a great day at school. I'll pick you up this afternoon, okay? No, you're going with Dad. See you later. Okay, apologies for the interruption. Let me go back. Okay. So awards have to be at least $500. Most scholarships are more than that, but that's our minimum award amount. And then each organization needs to have a clear and fair application and selection process. So what we're trying to avoid here is, a family creates a scholarship specifically give it to their cousin or to give it to someone that they know. So we need to know that it's an open application process and that you haven't pre-selected your winners as you open the applications. And then the majority of the work that I do is working with programs to administer their scholarships. So that can mean application design. Maybe an organization already has an application or we need to build one. And then I build it all into our site. I do a lot of work recruiting applicants. So going to schools, going to college fairs, doing video presentations, anything I can do to spread the word about My Scholarship Central. I also work with organizations in the review process. So creating review rubrics or using our review portal on My Scholarship Central. I also reach out to applicants and contact awardees. And then I also work with the scholarship programs to say, here's what we're learning as the best practices in scholarship administration. So one of the things that I worked with scholarship programs last year and this year is how are we adjusting to COVID and how are we adjusting to the challenges that students are facing? So this year, a number of students were not able to take the ACT or were not able to take the ACT until much later in the school year. So we asked scholarship providers as they were able to remove the ACT requirement because we didn't want students to not be able to apply for a scholarship because they were not able to take the ACT. So we have a pretty big impact, at least I like to think we do, in the state of Missouri and in our work. So this is all data from last school year. We are still in our scholarship cycle. This is actually one of our biggest deadline weeks of the year. So we've got lots and lots of deadlines this week. but I'll get to your question in 1 second, Heather. But so we're still in this year cycle. So this is all from last year. Last year we had 9,000 total student users on the site. Of those, so one step back here. So the way our site works is students fill out a general application, and this has all their basic information, name, address, where they go to high school, GPA, where they're going to college, all those types of things. And then they're matched specific scholarships that they then apply for those specific scholarships. So for your scholarship, they fill out the general application, they fill out an application for Rittner, and then they would apply for your scholarship. So of those 9,000 students who came into the system, 5,000 actually applied for specific scholarships. So we do lose students through the steps. Maybe they make multiple accounts. Maybe they realize there's no scholarships for them. Maybe they change their plans, etc. But we had 5,000 apply for specific scholarships, and nearly half of those students received an award. And you'll see there were more awards than students, which means many students were receiving multiple awards. And total last year in both scholarships and interest-free loans was $9.4 million. So all of these organizations coming together, $1,000 here, $5,000 here, $10,000 there, all came together to make $9.4 million. And the average award was just over $4,000. So again, most students were probably not receiving a $4,000 award. They were probably receiving one or two smaller awards, or maybe they got one of our bigger awards. About 45% of our users identify as students of color. So we know that that's really important because there is a huge income gap and wage gap in the United States for people of color, and that leads to challenges paying for college. And like I said earlier, about 88% of our students are from Missouri. Our next biggest state is Illinois, because we have a lot of students in the Metro East who use the site as well. And then we have a few opportunities outside of those two areas as well. Okay, so Heather asked, when people apply, what forms do you need and how do you determine financial needs? So that's a great question. So most organizations ask the student to provide their student aid report from the FAFSA. So they are expecting students to complete the FAFSA, the free application for federal student aid, which is the federal government document that all colleges use to determine financial need. So they're asking to see that, and there's a number on that form that's called the expected family contribution or the estimated family contribution. And that says, okay, based on this family's income and assets, we think that they'll be able to pay $5,000 a year for college, or $50,000 a year for college, or $100,000 a year for college. So most of our need-based scholarships are looking for students and families with an estimated family contribution less than $15,000 a year, and they're looking to kind of help fill that gap. And then the other document that's helpful is getting the financial aid offer from the college. So if a scholarship is able to see, okay, this student is trying to go to UMSL, they've received these scholarships, they still have this much in loans, and then the family is expected to pay this much, how can we fill in those gaps? So that's kind of how we use the information both from the colleges and from the government to do those. And if a student can't file the FAFSA or has other problems kind of providing those documents, we work with them and say, are there text forms? Can you provide a written letter? Is there a different form that you can do so we can learn a little bit more about their financial situation?
Sorry, another question, sorry.
Yeah, go for it.
Due to COVID, do you foresee any issues coming up with that due to financial stability changing? And would that open opportunities for other people to apply due to financial turmoil?
Yes, absolutely. So the way the FAFSA works is it's looking, so the FAFSA that students filed in the fall, so students file the FAFSA the fall before the year they're going to go to school. So the FAFSA that students filed in fall 2020 was based on income from the year of 2019. So there are a lot of students and families who have a FAFSA that does not reflect their current financial reality. So there are ways that students can communicate with the college to share that new information, and sometimes that is then reflected on their award letter or on their FAFSA. But I was emailing with a student and family this week where a parent lost a job, their family income has changed significantly. So we added a note to her application that says, you know, this is what the information on the FAFSA is, but we're expecting X amount of dollars fewer of income this year. And so we're asking you to consider that as you do this. So maybe our FAFSA looks great and it looks like we don't have need, but it's not accurate representation of where we are right now. So our hope is that a lot of students are realizing they're going to need the extra finances to be able to go to college and are using our site because of changes in family income. And that leads us perfectly into kind of the challenges of the past just over a year. So last year, you know, we were rocking and rolling. We had the most applicants we'd ever had. March happens and all the schools shut down. And so we kind of, most of our deadlines on Scholarship Central are in March and April. Some go farther, but most are in March and April. So we kind of got all the scholarship providers on the phone and said, what do we want to do? What are we going to do here? Do we keep deadlines where they are? Do we move them? And a lot of scholarships extended their deadlines. So especially the ones in March extended into April, and even many in April extended into May to be able to give students more time to finish their applications. We did not have a lot of financial impacts last year. Most organizations, you know, by the time March or April had hit, they'd already done their fundraiser, they had their funding in the bank, they were ready to go and administer their scholarships. And we did last year still end up with the most applicants ever, the most awards ever, the most money ever given, because everything hit pretty late in our cycle. This year has been very different. So general applications are down about 5% compared to last year. And they actually have been down more. And I think we've kind of hit the point because last year it was like rising. March hit and they kind of flatlined, and then they slowly started to go back up. So we're kind of in that flatline point. So it'll be interesting to see where we end up this year. And most years we've increased, like had 10%, 15% increases in applications. So being down versus even stable with the past year is a big change for us. Where we're really seeing the biggest impact, though, is students applying to specific scholarships. So maybe a student comes in and does that general application, but they don't finish it, or they submit it, but they're not going on to actually apply for scholarships. And I think there's a lot of reasons for that. I think one of the biggest things is students who are not in person don't have that hands-on support that they might need. When I was working directly with students, the best way to get a student to do scholarship applications was to sit next to them and walk them through the process. That was the way that it happened. I know so many counselors who grab students during lunch, who grab students in the hallway, who have students in their office supporting them through that process. That is not happening. A lot of schools are back in person, but it really varies district to district. And the districts where a lot of students are still virtual are often where there are the students with the highest need, so both financial need and support needs. So St. Louis Public Schools in the city of St. Louis, only about 20% of their seniors are attending school in person. So that means that there are a lot of students who are only having access to their counselor through video meetings, through email, through phone calls. Whether they're engaging that way at all is a big question. And the counselors are doing everything that they can and just running into so many challenges working with the students. I think a lot of students are also too figuring out, do I want to go to college next year? They have now done, an entire school year and almost a half of virtual learning. And I think a lot of students say, if this is what college is like, I am not doing this. I am not paying for this. I do not want to be any part of this. And so I think a lot of students are still trying to decide what to do. And with the flexibility of virtual school, and sometimes based on the need of the family, a number of students are now working full-time and doing school. So maybe they're working at work, or they've been able to adjust their schedule where they only have a couple hours of classes and they're able to work full-time. And students don't want to or can't give that up because they're helping support their families. And the other thing we've run into this year is we have had some organizations who are not offering scholarships this year because they haven't been able to fundraise. So some organizations have money built up over the years. Maybe they have an endowment, maybe they have forward planning, but some groups do a trivia night, a golf tournament, some type of annual fundraiser, and whatever is raised from that organization, from that fundraiser, it goes to the scholarships. So if an organization has not been able to do that in the past year, they're not offering scholarships. So that's been a big impact this year too. Luckily, we've brought on some new scholarships to kind of help replace that, but it has been hard to hear from scholarships that we don't have the money to offer a scholarship this year, and we hope to be back in the future. Looking towards the future and kind of where we want to go. So we want to continue statewide expansion. We are not looking at really expanding beyond the state of Missouri. Our focus is Missouri, with some bleed into the neighboring states with our metro areas, but we want to continue to be statewide. We are still very heavily St. Louis, and we want to continue to reach more in all the other parts of the states. We're also looking for additional funding partners. So we're approaching foundations, charitable organizations to say, can you help us fund our mission so we can continue to grow? We are always looking to add scholarship opportunities because every year we have more students. So every year we need more money on the site. We don't want our site to get more competitive. We want our site to have more and more opportunities and more money for students. And then one of the things I think coming in the next few years, many of you have probably done this with your organization, is just looking at what else is out there in terms of the software and in terms of scholarship management programs. Is there a website? Is there a software system that would work better for us as we continue to grow and to serve students better? So that is what I have for you all today. I am happy to answer any questions, clarify anything. I'm an open book at this point. Let me know what you want to know.
And I have muted everybody, so if you have a question or something, you will have to unmute yourself.
Kaitlyn, thanks so much. That was a great presentation and very thorough.
Good.
Are there other states that have similar programs?
That's a great question. We are one of the few states with something like this. So Washington State, they call theirs the WASH Board, and theirs is a combination of public and private scholarships. So like their state administered scholarships are also on this site, but then they also have a number of private scholarships. So they're one of the few other states that has this. There are other kind of regional resources like this, but as far as we know, it's kind of us and Washington State, and especially in that free nonprofit focused world. Other places have maybe paid sites, or there's all kind of the national scholarship sites, but we are one of the few states who have a resource like this. So, and we're very unique in that. Yeah.
Other questions, anyone?
I was just going to say for Kaitlyn and Heather's benefit, we normally, if this were a normal year, we would meet at Russo's. We would charge $10 for a breakfast. And that's all put on everybody's due statement and so on like that. But we have not, obviously, we have not been doing that. But what our club just did decide to do was to take 3 of those $10 payments voluntarily. If you wish to join in, you could. If not, so add $30 to your thing, to your bill, rather than not paying any of it. And that went into our charitable. That went into our fundraising. This year was self fundraising. We do a mouse race every January. Obviously, that did not happen. And to be very fair, I would say 95% of the club has done that. We have raised, if I'm not mistaken, Ruth's on the call, and I don't have the numbers. Ruth's our treasurer, but we have raised, I believe, either the same or more than what we would have done with the mouse races. So it did force us, as well as I'm sure others, this whole situation to rethink, how do you fundraise? How do you do stuff like this? And yeah, getting into our own pockets is not the best idea. I really much prefer other people's money. By the same token, it at least kept it afloat for another year. But it did force a change for a lot of different things this year.
Mm-hmm. Kaitlyn is chairman of our scholarship group. We haven't had a whole lot of applications, and I've worked with Rotary High School to try to encourage them to talk to kids and get more applications. Is that common with a lot of the scholarships?
Yes. So the more narrow a scholarship's requirements, the fewer applications they get, which makes sense because there's just fewer students to pull from. So you all are pulling from the seniors of Rittner, which is a few hundred students. So we would expect more applicants, but not all of them are going to go to college. Not all of them need scholarships. and not all of them have the motivation, will, support to follow all the way through. So while I wish we would see many, many more applicants for your scholarship, because it's a great opportunity, not every student always follows all the way through. But then we have scholarships where the requirements are like, you have to live in one of these 5 counties and have a 2.5 GPA and have done community service. Okay, those are really broad requirements. So that scholarship might get 100+ applicants because they're pulling from so many different areas and from so many different types of students. So it really just depends on the requirements. Some of it is how much outreach is doing. Do you have an engaged counselor? Do you have a champion? Do you have an advocate? Do you have connections out there kind of doing the work to help spread the word about the scholarship?
When I retired from Whitmer High School as the activities director in 2019, I worked with Julie Campschrader closely. One of the things that kind of migrated to the activities director was running the scholarship application process with actually Julie, and now Cabrina did that, and then they funneled them all to me, and then I had to make copies and send it out to all of my teacher volunteers. So when Scholarship Central came along, it was so much easier to manage, as far as, because we had I don't know, maybe 20 different scholarships that students could apply for with our uniform scholarship application. It was very interesting. We found that more students would apply for the smaller scholarships than they would for the larger scholarships. We had 2 foundations that had an $8,000 scholarship, $2,000 a year over 4 years. We had less students apply for that one than they did for like our choir alumni scholarship of $500. I just, is that, I'm sure that's probably typical as well.
Yeah, it kind of depends. Sometimes it's the requirements. So students are going to be much more likely to fill out an application that's 1 essay and their resume than we need all of your 4 different essays and multiple different letters of recommendation and all of these different things. So a lot of that. But I think sometimes students, and what I really recommend to students is like, find the most specific scholarships that you qualify for, because you have the best chance of earning those. So if you are part of the choir, that's a small group of students. You're not competing against that many people. That's a really good one for you to apply for. And I'm so glad you talked about that transition from paper to online, because I hear that from a lot of counselors. We've brought on a number of school districts to do that. And when everything got shut down last year, I was so glad the Scholarship Central was functioning, because I was like, just think about, if this had happened before Scholarship Central, the stacks of paper on counselors' desks that would have sat there untouched for months because no one could go in the building, because students couldn't be there. Nobody has a printer anymore. Like, students especially don't have printers. So if they had been needing to print out applications, that just was not going to happen. So it was a really good thing that Scholarship Central could still keep functioning through the pandemic, and not having students rely on either printing or getting paper applications from their counselors.
Heather, I believe you had a question or something.
Yeah, it was just basically an idea on how to go about getting more students engaged in applying for scholarship opportunities. Granted, COVID and all of the restrictions that are put in place, has anyone ever tried to host like almost like a job fair, but not really a job fair, more so it's a day designated for seniors that are in place because the schedules are staggered for hybrid learning? Have they tried to have like a representative from My Scholarship Central there to like highlight how this does pertain to the student and kind of engage with them and get them excited about it? Because I'm not that far away. 2007 is when I graduated high school. And I noticed that when I did apply for scholarships, there were so many restrictions or stipulations that you had to fall into to basically get the award. And that was kind of derailing at the sense, and I wasn't motivated to keep pushing, but then I also got filtered into, okay, now you have to pay for this website. Now you have to pay for this website. So it got very complicated and frustrating. Now, they're already frustrated because they're virtually learning. So they're not going to feel that they qualify for much. And unfortunately, they're not going to read through all of those things. They're just going to be like, oh, I don't agree with that. I don't fall into that buy.
Right.
So is there any way that even just ourselves, we can advocate for My Scholarship Central or even the Rotary to set up a booth and have like a scholarship job fair type thing to say, hey, we're going to advocate for you. We're going to kind of do that little legwork and make it a little bit expedited for you.
Yeah, that's a great question. And when we did things in person, I would go to college fairs, or sometimes counselors would just have events and I would go and do that. And I love working with students and I love talking to students. So I really enjoyed those. And the other really great piece for me is organizations like UMSL has their bridge program. So this is a program for high school students to get them ready for college. So I went to their Saturday workshop and we did a 2-hour scholarship workshop where I gave them all the information and then they worked on applications and I could come around and help them. So those types of things make a huge difference. And my hope is that next school year, I will be able to go back into schools, both for college fairs and presentations. But I would even love to just, because I miss being in a school and being with students, I would even just love to say, Rittner, can I come on a Friday and work out of your counseling office for the whole day? And any student that stops by, I can talk to them, I can support them, and just be there to support them, because that person-to-person interaction really does make a big difference. But I think the things that you can do as a Rotary Club is just spread the word about Scholarship Central, whether it's to your friends, family, anybody you know who's in high school or college and is looking for money for college. Let them know about the site. Maybe it's coworkers, maybe it's people from church, neighbors. Spread the word. And then also, if you know other organizations that do provide scholarships, send them my way and I'll talk to them and see if they're the right fit and see if we would be a good place for them to be.
Kaitlyn, I have two questions, and I think you kind of answered one just now. You know, because I always thought like, well, Rittner's using My Scholarship Central to help funnel, and other schools are too. But for schools that aren't using that, those students are still eligible to apply now, I'm gathering.
Yes, absolutely. So we have scholarships from about 6 school districts that are only for those school districts. But most of the other scholarships, it's much more like a geographic requirement, county or state, or maybe where they're going to college. So even if, you know, like, I'm trying to think somebody who's not on our site. So like Maplewood, Richmond Heights doesn't have a specific scholarship on our site, but those students still come on our site and still find plenty of scholarships to apply for.
Okay, and my second question is this just for high school students, or what about graduate school?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the majority of our opportunities are for current high school students going to college. We do, I would guess, I think it's about 1/3 of our scholarships are for current college students. And college there is the broad term of college: community college, 4-year university, trade school, vocational school, kind of all of those. We only have a couple opportunities for graduate students. So the Jewish Federation has a couple opportunities for graduate students. And I believe we have 1 or 2 organizations where the funding can be used for graduate school, but we do not have many opportunities for graduate school. And we have a few opportunities for adult learners, students going back to college, but we don't have, I would love to get more of those. We do have one really cool program that's called the Finish Line Degree Completion Grant. So this is for students who've gone to college, done some college, but have been unable to return because they owe a balance at their college. And most often these balances are less than $3,000, but students can't go back to their college or transfer to any other college until that's paid off. And so they're in a really tough situation where they have some college, but not the whole degree, but they can't finish it off because maybe they owe a few $1,000s. And this organization splits the balance with the college. So they say, we'll pay half of that if the college will either write off or pay the other half, and allow the student to go back and finish their degree.
Thank you.
Heather, thanks so much. It's definitely a wonderful program, very organized and very worthwhile. So you did a great job of explaining everything to us and answering our questions, and we really appreciate it. If
I'm
you've
so
got
glad.
something else that you need to do, feel free to leave. I need to talk to the club just for a second.
Yeah,
about
I would say
the
I think I'll
scholarship.
hop off and get on with my day, but I'm so grateful that you all are part of the site and that you continue to provide funding for students, because every dollar really does make a difference. When I
Yeah.
was working directly with students, they thought that applying to college was the hard part. Paying for college is the really hard part. Anybody can get into college who works hard and does the work. Finding enough money, even some of the brightest students I worked with, we could not find enough money for them to be able to go. So
Mhm.
I really appreciate all that you're doing and look forward to continuing to work with you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Have a good
Kaitlyn.
day. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
And Heather, I welcome another Simpson. I hope you'll join us.
Yes, I intend to. Thank you.
Just quickly before we leave, we received 4 scholarship applications that we need to, I didn't do the rubric, and we're not going to go on Scholarship Central to screen them because we don't have that many, and we can deal with interviewing 3 or 4 students easily. So what I'd like to know is, and I'll send an email out to the club, but I need some people who would be willing to interview the scholarship applications. I have copies of the scholarships. The one thing that is, they are specific. They have names on them. They have personal information on them. So we need to be careful about distributing them and what we do with them. But I will need to send everyone the applications, everyone who's willing to help interview them, because you'll need to review the applications, and then I'll need to find out a good time. We can go to Rittner High School and do the interviews in person. I did get clearance for that. So sometime within the next, hopefully 2 to 3 weeks, I'd like to get that taken care of. So expect an email from me today. And if you can help, I'd really appreciate it.
And I have one other announcement, and that is, remember, next week we are not meeting at 7. We are going to meet at 11:45 or noon at the latest. You all should have a link, and you will get another reminder on Friday with Tom's district conference being all virtual. And Heather, Jerry, can you share with Heather the link if she so desires? Okay. We can. Well, now you're going to make me write it down, Heather. Thank you very much. Okay, great. More work for the AV guy. But remember, we're not meeting at noon. I'll send a newsletter out. I will copy you in on the newsletter, Heather, and remind everybody, but it's going to be with Tom's conference. You can join in every day with that same link at that same time. There are different things going on each day. And I will probably send the newsletter out earlier because I usually send it on Monday morning. But since this starts noon on Monday, I may do it over the weekend. I may have a go over the weekend so that everybody gets stuff in advance. So no meeting next week at 7. It will be a noon meeting instead.
Cool.
Anything
Thank you, David.
else?
I just want to publicly thank David for all his help with the district conference. Without him, it would be 62 minutes of dead air time pretty much, but we all appreciate what he's done.
It's somehow I got tapped into being AV, and I still haven't figured out how that ever happened.
I think you volunteered for something like that many, many years ago.
No, I got voluntold. For those that never heard the story, and I can do it in about 10 seconds. Well, maybe not quite that short. I was on my way down to Tulsa for the Zone Institute, and we were going down strictly. This was my first year as past governor. We were going down strictly to help Stacy out in the House of Friendship and just hang around. That's all we were doing. I get a phone call, a panicked phone call from Scott Harness, the governor before me, who was doing the AV. When are you going to be here? I said, well, I don't know. The GPS at whatever time it was. Fine. When you get here, see me. Okay. So he called an hour or two later. How close are you? Well, I'm an hour or two closer to when you called the last time. He said, when you get here, see me. And I said, what's going on, Scott? He said, you're going to work with me on AV. I said, no, I'm working with Stacy at the House of Friendship. He said, you've been traded. You're working with me. And literally, we walked in. Scott's waiting for us. We had the luggage. He looked at me and he said, and anybody that knows Scott can imagine him saying this, pointed at me. He said, you come with me. Pointed at Mary. You get his luggage. And we walked off. That was my introduction to audiovisual. That was in September of 2008. I'm sorry, 2009. And it's been that way ever since. So yeah, I kind of got volunteer in Rotary, Heather, for what you may or may not realize. You have two ways to do it. You can volunteer or be voluntold. And I have a feeling the military is pretty much the same way.
Very much the same.
Yep. So anyway,
You just
If there's-
color.
if there is nothing else, we will go ahead and end and see you all at noon next week.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you all.